I've had CBP folks show me around so I can see firsthand what they're dealing with, and they have a heck of a challenge on their hands. And we, through our joint terrorism task forces in particular, work very closely with our DHS partners to try to bring the counterterrorism dimension to the threat.
The Biden administration may have a problem on its hands, particularly the president, because when your FBI director says the quiet part out loud, watch out. A somber assessment from FBI director on the national security challenges caused by the crisis at the border. Customs and Border Protection reports agents have caught 42 suspected terrorists at our southern border from October to April, just 6 months. So we know that. Let's layer on. This comes after Border Patrol released a suspected terrorist into the United States in April. He was flagged by the FBI, but not located and arrested until 2 weeks later. Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, along with Arizona Democrat Senator Kyrsten Sinema, are introducing a bill that would ensure the Biden administration have a plan in place before lifting Title 42, the Trump-era emergency measure which limits immigration due to the pandemic. Senator Lankford, who's heading to the border this week, is in focus now, and the senator sits on the Homeland Security Committee and is the top Republican on Homeland's Border Management Subcommittee. First of all, welcome to the Faulkner Focus.
Thanks.
And I want to get to what's in this bill and how you have been able to do a bipartisan pull on this.
Yeah, this has been long-term relationships to be able to push back and forth, to be able to bring facts to bear, to say this is what's really happening, this is what's going on, sitting down with Democrat senators and trying to be able to argue through based on the facts of what's actually happening. They understand there's total chaos at the border and it's getting worse every month. When we get to March was the highest number ever, then April was higher than March actually. We have 250,000 people a month now that are illegally crossing the border. Half of those the Biden administration is turning around based on Title 42, but literally the Biden administration is trying to fight with the courts right now to be able to lift even that piece because they want all of that 250,000 to be able to illegally cross the border without having to stop it all. So I've worked with 5 Democrats that have joined me to be able to put a pushback on this administration and say you can't just lift Title 42 until all of it is lifted because it's a pandemic response piece. They're trying to keep bits and pieces of it in place and then just ignore on the border, and they've got to have a plan. The plan they released literally says in the last paragraph of it, despite our best efforts, the number of migrants is going to continue to go up. So their plan is none of this is going to actually work because they know they're actually facilitating illegal immigration, not stopping it.
So when you say that number, and I'm glad you did, 250,000 people being turned away, and we don't have enough to handle right now what's going on, it takes resources to turn them away. Can you imagine letting them into the country?
Right. Well, it's 250,000 that are crossing the border. Half of those were being turned away, but they're talking about all 250,000 they want to be able to release. Right now, ICE is telling us they don't have enough personnel to be able to fly people back out of the country, but they seem to have enough personnel to be able to fly people into the country. And so it's the bizarre thing where you see the priorities of the administration. They won't do remain in Mexico. They want to release the Title 42 to allow more people to come in. Right now, if you illegally cross the border and ask for asylum, they give you an asylum hearing 8 years in the future. 8 years. So they know that's just going to facilitate more people coming.
Well, and politically, if you want to look at it that way, and everything these days almost is, what does that give them on this issue? Longevity.
It does. It gives them the moment to be able to have a lot of people to come in. Here's the problem. These are folks coming in from all over the world. We don't know any of their criminal backgrounds to the places they're coming from. They run a criminal background check to see if they've committed a crime in the United States, but we have no idea of the crimes they've committed in their previous country. There's not even a check on that at all. And so there are major problems that they're actually setting up in our society, and they just seem to ignore that.
Well, and all the gotaways, the 700,000 or so of them that we have yet to learn anything about. I'll move to this. We've just set another record for gasoline prices. Millions of Americans are set to hit the road for the Memorial holiday weekend. The average for a gallon of regular unleaded is now $4.60, more than 50% higher than it was just a year ago. Critics point to President Biden's policies for this huge price surge. Energy Secretary Granholm defending her boss, though, and saying this crisis shows why the nation needs to turn to clean energy.
He's obsessed with the fact that gas prices are so high and people are hurting, and this is a global issue. So what can he do? So you can exhort the oil and gas industry to increase supply, and it tells us that that's why you have to, at the same time, accelerate our movement to clean energy. You can walk and chew gum, you can do both, but the fact that we are paying these outrageous prices almost is an exclamation point on the fact that we need to move to clean energy so that we are not in this position in the future.
Senator Lankford, the Secretary of Energy says the president is obsessed with this issue of gas prices. Can you imagine how he handles the things he ignores?
I can, actually, because I've seen those things as well. We've seen it in baby formula and multiple other areas, areas that he's ignored. Here's the simple fact of this. The price of gas went 50% up in the first year of the Biden presidency because what she was articulating is exactly where they are. They want to try to push people to get to different energy sources by raising the price of oil and gas. But what they weren't anticipating was how out of control that this would really get, and they've created this spiral of inflation based on what happened with them increasing energy prices and then that $2 trillion bill that they put in place last year. The two things combined have been catastrophic for Americans, and they directly cause this by cutting off access to pipelines, by cutting off permitting, cutting off federal lands and waters for leasing, by continuing to make it hard to be able to get capital. These are all things they put in place in their very first year because they intended to push people, but their unintended quote-unquote consequence was this dramatic inflation that we're all suffering the consequences of.
Look, I don't know what he can tap immediately in terms of alternatives at this point. You know, they have grid issues every summer because of the heat and the fires out in the West in California where the gas is highest right now. So if you're telling people, if you're forcing them to go to electric cars, which they cannot afford, plugging it in at least 3 to 5 months of the year might not be an option. Last quick thought.
Yeah, a quick thought on this, Harris, that they continue to say, well, this will encourage people to go to other sources of energy so we can get a better price on it. They don't account for the fact that China is the one who controls all of our lithium and cobalt. So we talk about actually trying to be able to move to China and be dependent on them for energy. That's a really terrible idea on it. Let's do American energy production, and we can do it cleaner than anyone else in the world. But the only way price goes down is if supply goes up, and they're blocking supply now. Why
would we want to lean on China more than we already do? I mean, seriously, they lied to us at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic and vacuumed up all the PPE, put us in the worst position possible, and they haven't done anything friendly since. Senator Lankford, from the great state of Oklahoma, thank you for being in focus.
You bet. Good to see you again.
You too.